Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are on this fast forward planet, which is wrapped in layers of turbulence that are too numerous to count. And that can lead to lots of stresses, and, uncertainty is not our friend most of the time. Music, though, can help in many different ways. And that's why I'm really happy to do this Sunday Sanity show with my old friend Dar Williams, who has a new album out, Hummingbird Highway. We'll hear some of it in a minute, and we'll talk with Dar, who's coming in here from the village we used to both live in. I mean, now I'm in Maine, and but I do miss the Hudson Valley, and the main thing I miss about it is the people there, including people like Dar Williams. So, congratulations on the new album, and we'll talk about your other work, helping other people write songs and the like. How are you doing these days? That's always an interesting question.
Yeah. Oh, you're asking? I mean,
Yeah.
we'll just get to it. We'll get
Yeah.
in as we can.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about Righteous Babe Records too, which is your new musical home. But maybe we'll just let me play this cut for people who may not be too familiar with your work, and certainly the new one. So I'm just going to play Hummingbird Highway, which is a song I really love.
Columbines are coming up down by the gate, pouring out sugar water on a broken plate, and I've dressed up my best dolls to celebrate. You're coming home from the Hummingbird Highway, but the hour has come and the hour has passed, just when I think they got you at last, and the pirates have tied you to the galleon's mast. You're coming home from the Hummingbird Highway. Every time you're round the bend, I'll jump into your arms again. You know my kind, I'm the hummingbird's friend. I help you find your way back home. You're laying out the treasures you brought from me, cinnamon bark from a cinnamon tree, and a stone that you saw clear at the bottom of the sea. Back from the Hummingbird Highway, but I never could imagine, I never could have guessed, you're opening the clasp on a tiny golden chest. It's a hummingbird shell in a hummingbird's nest. Back from the Hummingbird Highway, every time you're round the bend, I'll jump into your arms again. You know my kind, I'm the hummingbird's friend. I help you find your way. And a hummingbird, you know he doesn't sing. The humming comes from his flapping wings, and he only likes the sweetest things. Only likes the sweetest things. Putting out the cinnamon rolls while they're hot, pouring out tea from a china blue pot. And I don't think you're happy, no, I know that you're not. You can't blame it on the Hummingbird Highway. You say it's the older you feel, it's the older I get. Your highest of highs, your deepest regret, and no one ever says if you've gotten there yet. Can't blame it on the Hummingbird Highway, 'cause you know I know sometimes instead you just get lost inside your head, and sometimes can't get out of bed. Now you're getting out of bed, and here you come around the bend. The pirates sent you back again. I'll raise my flag, I'm the hummingbird's friend. I help you find your way. Every time you're round the bend, I'll jump into your arms again, and we'll fly. We'll fly, we'll fly. Every time back home.
Bravo. So, tell us a little bit about the writing process.
Until 2022,
Oh, hold
I
on.
was
Let me stop that.
Sorry if that's.
Up there.
I went to, I was on a Cayamo cruise, and which is like the folk cruise for it, that this group Six Man does, and my manager wanted to do the like one of the little side trips that you can take, and it just seems so touristy, and I was like, well, I'm a tourist. So we went to, it was in Belize, which is a really wonderful country, and all the people I spoke with were like, come on in, spend a little money, we're good. So we went down to this spice farm, and they said that the middle highway, one of the middle highways of Belize, is called the Hummingbird Highway. And I had all of these melodies and little fragments of words, kind of like a fever dream, like you wake up and you have little fragments. That's where my songs were at for the next album. But I immediately, when I heard that, sort of felt this sort of warm center, like these things being attracted to it, about the Hummingbird Highway being the touring life. It's fast, it's a little too fast, it's frenetic, it's beautiful, it's international, and also I realized, I don't know, because we were at the spice farm, and I was thinking, okay, what do I bring home from my kids? I was thinking about how it relates to children, because in so many ways, like, you keep your inner child alive and stuff. And a friend of mine said, and sometimes your inner child competes with your children, and, or competes, there's a competition for time, with your children. So I was thinking about parents trying to, stay alive themselves and bring some of that wonder and excitement home to their kids, but, and the complexity of that. And then I was thinking about people who, are touring in their heads, are just really battling a lot of voices and different kinds of divergencies, not necessarily neurodivergency, substance divergencies and demons, and how they make they tell their kids what they're going through, which sometimes it leads to kids being a little parenting of their parents. And I know what it's like when I would say to my kids, I'm going through something tough, and they put their little hands on my back and be like, how's it going, Mom? And I thought, I don't know if this is like healthy, but I'll be honest about, what's going on.
How do you know when it's done, when a song is done? Like, how much do you work over your tunes?
A lot. I don't know. I've never been able to answer. I know when I know. There's a moment when I say, okay, there's some throwaway stuff that I put in, and I do a little reckoning, and I tell myself that I'm going to have to play this thing maybe 1,000 times. So now's the moment. And that helps.
That sounds like a good rationale and practice. I like, but you said you throw in some things extra, knowing that you're going to cut them out.
There's some lines that I think are suffice, and then I kind of go back to see if there's a refinement. We have in the songwriting retreat that I have, there's these questions that we ask, which is like, when you're writing a song, you say, like, where did I go? Where did I really go? What happened? What really happened? So, for instance, you might say, I feel so betrayed, and you're working through the song, and you're working through the plot, and you're working through the feelings of the narrator, which are thinly veiled feelings of your own. And you're like, you know what? I betrayed myself. That's what really happened. That the betrayal was that I couldn't really hold up to my own standard. And that's me. So that kind of what really happened is a very valuable question. And sort of what did I really see? Like Hummingbird Highway, I thought what really happens is that we let our children parent us and love us for our own crazy selves. And we hope that love is enough for us to come back and say, I'm sorry if you didn't feel like I was parenting you as much as I could have. That's really what, but a lot of my friends and I deal with.
Right. Yeah. I've been there with that too. So tell us more about the songwriting retreats. You've been doing these for a number of years now. And what are some other prompts or practices that you hone there that might be useful for someone to jot down?
It's the I wrote a book called How to Write a Song That Matters, and I was like, okay, this book is the staying out of the. It's a guide that stays out of the way. Like, it was, a lot of things are about staying out of people's way. So I say, well, this is when I hit this crossroads, and this is when I didn't know what to do next. And like, for instance, there's this thing I call the sentimentimeter. When I feel like I'm writing something that sounds too sweet and too sentimental and I'm embarrassed, I'm like, don't throw it out. Just look at the centimeter and, decide where you want it to be, because, writing a sweet song is great. Why not? But you can use words that dry up the song a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have a song with the chorus that says, "You'll fly away, but take my hand until that day." So when they ask how far love goes, then the line is, "When my job's done, you'll be the one who knows." You'll know what love is after that. So if I said, "When day is done, you'll be the one who knows," it would have kind of stayed in that highfalutin place. And I was like, it was too sweet. And so I applied the sentimentometer. And this is something that I learned from myself, but also like the people that I was writing, they would be so upset by, how gooey their songs felt. And I would say that, and then they would realize, as I would, that they just needed to dry it up a little. That's, we came up with sort of these terminologies so that we could stay the course. So I changed, the line was, "When my job's done," which is a very pedestrian word, very conversational word. I applied the centimeter. Those are the kinds of things that we arrived at. Asking these essential questions is another thing. Writing the song that we're writing is, I think, something that we've learned. People are like, "I came here to write a political song because I'm really freaked out about what's going on." I'm like, "But you wrote a love song, for your family, and it's kind of great. Like, maybe we don't tempt fate. Maybe we continue with what we're writing." That's been an important lesson that we offer each other. Like, I'm very much a songwriter amongst songwriters, and I think that's been helpful.
And that's something I wanted to ask you too about. In fact, I've been working on a song for years that's now gelling. That's basically, it's called "Life is a Band," and it's about, it's the conceit is the solo singer songwriter, in marginal audiences, clapping a little bit and looking at their devices, and some guy comes up to him after a show and says, "Hey, come down here." And it's here in Maine, there's this amazing place. Every Monday morning, I'll be there. And Monday night, I'll be there tomorrow night. They have what's called a kitchen junket run by Molly Galler, who's a wonderful fiddler. And people just get together and sing songs. And it's a band, and there's something about bouncing things back and forth that isn't there for the solo singer-songwriter. Do you find, when you're writing with when you're with Michelle Gedney or one of the Neilds, or is your practice still mostly solitary, like bouncing things around with yourself and then saying it's done, or do you bounce it off of other people, that kind of thing?
I'm mostly alone, although recently I was thinking I got to get back in the saddle of reaching out to people and writing with them, because I don't know, it's good tension. It's good tension to bring into one's life. And, I keep on things sort of, I have some ideas that I'm working on now, but sometimes they just kind of sputter, and bring people in is just a good way to keep them holding you to it, and vice versa. And even the sort of no, that's not where I wanted to go, can spur some things. So yeah, we know that. But different than songwriting is just playing with other people. Yeah. And that is, seeing harmony with them, being in bands with them. I mean, I've done all of the above. And it's like a language, every time in dance or music, every time I come across a language beyond words. It's like a powerful force to recognize as us mere humans that there's just a history, a memory, and a connection that happens when we make music together. Which is, I love getting up on a stage and doing the one woman show and feeding off of the vibes from the audience. I mean, that's very real.
Sure.
Every audience is very different. But the music language, I mean, I'm straight ahead hippie on that one.
There's nothing wrong with that. So let's talk about Righteous Babe, which is your home. I mean, you and Ani go way back in terms of being in the same kind of zone and where you played and how you approach audiences and build community. And way back in 1998, I wrote this article about her activism when this was like the early days of Righteous Babe, and she was like trying to rebuild Buffalo even while she was building a business. And talk about her a little bit and about why and how you got to Righteous Babe Records.
Well, that article, by the way, Andy, my mom sent to me, and because I was in that beginning thing of sort of feeling like the best thing to do is to contextualize yourself. You're traveling all the time. Things get very frenetic. So, but and my parents are big time. My dad's the town historian. They're very involved with the history museum, the historical society, and fundraising. Their roots are all in, creating the library in our town stuff. So they were like, look at her. And I was like, I don't really have the power yet to be that person, but that's what I want to be doing. She was piling bricks into the back of, I think if I remember correctly, into the backs of trucks, just figuring out sort of just very hands-on ways to help Buffalo. And so that article was a good spur from me, because my mom's like, this person. I'm like, oh, Ani. Oh, I know all about Ani. So she and I, so we'd known each other for years. And actually what happened was we were looking for a label, and my manager mentioned Righteous Babe, and we suddenly realized that we could sort of check out Righteous Babe without talking to Ani. And I had this great administrative team that could go to her, like my people could go to her people, and it wouldn't have to be weird. I wouldn't have to go to Ani and say like, friends, but like, could I also? So the first thing we did was like, look at her biz, and it's really good. It just turns out that hand-selected, hardworking, honest, as Utah Phillips used to say, make a living, not a killing, people do excellent work. And I learned early on with some labels that I spoke with that were just kind of oozing weird stuff from the start, that there's no such thing as just business. When they screw you and they say, well, it's just business. Like, rarely did I have that relationship with Razor and Tie where I was for 20 years. So these people believe in good business, good and great, as they say. So we were like, wait a minute, this is the label we'd want to be on, even if they were a bunch of like mercenary jerks. Like, this is good. This is good. And then I met with Steve, who runs the label, and then they ran it by Ani, who gets the final word. But by then, there were plenty of ways that she could have said not a fit. It's okay, So really, it was my friendship that kept me from wanting to get too close. I know most of the people on the roster, and I'm very close friends with a few of them. So it was, and a few of them are going to be doing shows with me with the album. So it's pretty exciting. I mean, it's very exciting. And in this political climate, we kind of look to each other as well. I think the lean-to of people that you respect doing work together is something that you seek out, and I have sought it out with this group.
For sure. And that brings us to the political climate right now. You were on a show with me, with Beth Nielsen Chapman, way back when there might have been a woman in the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And Beth had co-written that song, Put a Woman in Charge. And boy, it seems like a very long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And when the election first happened, I was like, 70 plus million people voted for a woman of color.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've come far enough for that to have happened. And some of this stuff was the norm, some of this, but now, and I thought, well, we've made it this far and we're going to take it farther in terms of just representation and all the things, for the environment and justice that we have been trying to bring forward. And now I think we are recognizing, Jamie Raskin has a book called Unthinkable, and he says that Madeleine Albright pointed out that fascism is not a philosophy. Fascism is a way of gaining and maintaining power. So that's what we're seeing is just kind of all the stops pulled out to gain and maintain power, and like calling it the Department of War. It's just,
yeah, I know, boy.
And friends of mine saw glimpses of this with Nixon. I had a teacher who wrote a letter to Nixon that said, "I'm a veteran. I really think you got to get out of Vietnam. I understand that it's difficult, but the time is now." And he got back this letter that said something like, "We're watching you." And he wrote this like expletive laced letter that he told us all about in high school. And I told him so people see glimpses of that, just pure power move thing. And it's important for us to know that that's a reaction to the fact that so many genies are out of the bottle and I know so many people who wake up every morning and kind of turn the wheel towards sustainability. Sustain what? And a progressing conversation of inclusion. It's their whole day in every state I've met them. So I experience the power of courts, states, cities, individuals, arts, news, journalism, and yet, don't want to be minimizing the enormous effort that is being made to pull something major down, democracy itself.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you. We've talked about this before. When you wrote your book, "What I Found in 1,000 Towns," it reminded me of Reggie Harris, who might pop on here later.
I hope so.
Another touring musician, and it's like you experience so many different places when you do that, when you're on the road. And I don't know what lessons from that come to mind as you see this effort to keep us divided, in this country.
I think I have strong feelings about that, which is that, in places, there's something called social capital. And social capital is like financial capital, political capital. It's a bank account of sorts. And there's something called bonding social capital. And Robert Putnam talks a lot about this. He's a great Harvard who wrote Bowling Alone. And he says, there's bonding capital, which Dar would define as like, let's say I'm an Episcopalian in 1998 or whenever the Episcopalians were like, we're not sure how we feel about gay people and other people. But let's say I'm an Episcopalian woman and I'm sick. People from my congregation bring me chicken soup and take care of me and look out for me. That's beautiful bonding social capital within a bond that I have of a known institution. Bridging social capital is when I have roses in my garden and I'm spraying something on them to keep the aphids off. And my Orthodox Jewish neighbor with a yarmulke comes over and says, "Does that really work?" Because this is what I use. And I say, it does. It's dawn. It's for some reason it has to be dawn. And then the couple next door come over, two women, and I just see them putting their canoe on their, car on the weekends, but I kind of keep my distance because I think maybe they're gay. They come over and they say, actually, there's a 7th generation soap that's just as good, but you're right. It's only those 2. And then we start to talk about aphids and roses.
Right.
If that organically grows to the next conversation, that's called bridging social capital. And that is harder for people to come in and turn into balkanized, separate, look over your shoulder, everyone's out to get you, no one respects you kind of acts, like strategies. So, and there's a strength there because in seeing this common ground, let's say at some point we hear about a community center, a beautiful old building that's going to be torn down or turned into a community center if we can get our act together. Suddenly, all my friends from my Episcopal church, all of the women from the boating club next door, all of the people from within our constituencies from the temple can come in together into town hall and talk about this project and argue for the commons because we have a common good in common. So I'm a huge advocate of bridging social capital projects. And that's why I started Spooky Town in our town, which was, as Andy knows, we have this thing called Parrot Street, which is where kids go and adults throw themselves into this trick-or-treating thing. I mean, they put heads floating in dry ice in their lawns. It's disgusting and fantastic. They walk around like with their arm, with bandages, pretending that they have the arms hanging off. And these are like PTA members, we have that. So in our town, I thought, it's really scary for kids under 5. So let's start in this row housing, senior housing, that's a quarter mile out of town, kind of estranged. They don't have a lot of relatives in town. Let's ask if they can do a pre-5-year-old trick-or-treating called Spooky Town. And it was just a way to open up some hellos and some just being there. And it's a lovely thing. We just added apples and apple ciders, and the parents, all hang out in the courtyard and just kind of getting the cross-pollination started is worth it. I don't know. I have some relationships with people who live in the row housing now that are very interesting, but also we can come to each other with questions and resources and stuff. So as small as that sounds, bridging social capital is, I think, a strategy towards resisting the narratives. Everybody's laughing at you. Nobody takes you seriously. Culture of the aggrieved, strategies of just power mongering.
Yeah, and there's so much value to that beyond in different dimensions. Resilience to hazards and disasters, and not just political ones, but geophysical ones.
Right, exactly.
It's maximized by the same dynamics.
It sounds so simple, but knowing somebody who knows somebody, Jonathan Rose told me about this thing that's called linking capital, which is just, someone who knows someone. And I was talking to somebody in Nashville about an issue, and she goes, you know what? I know the mayor's caterer. I was like, get in there. Yeah, and, we know our former congressman because he lived here in town, but, to know someone who knows someone, I think really calms the brain. And the more we create opportunities for people to know someone who knows someone and open ourselves up that way, I think the more we clump together in profound ways. Yeah.
And also just knowing where the vulnerable people are as well.
Yes, that's the other thing. It shows
good old John Prine. I did a show with Tom Piazza about his new book about John Prine, and Hello in There. It's just one of my favorite all-time songs. If you're walking down the street sometime, spot some hollow ancient eyes, just say hello. Mm-hmm. There's a lot in that lyric.
You say hello, but also no. I actually have this, Joan Baez used to cover that one, and she got some pushback from the Grey Panthers, who said also, like, we're so freaking smart. We have time. So, bring us into the schools, bring us in.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that's been good about the Spooky Town. One of the people from there is a big volunteer at this thrift sale I help run. And she has been, it's clothes. And she's helped us identify some people who need clothes or need to help, need to engage. And they come and they help us haul stuff around. And she has been a golden link to the retired folks in our town, and they have been an incredible help. So it's my thing that I learned from traveling all around in the book is that actually engaging yourself in a project and kind of using that project as an opportunity to link in, like if it's a history project, going into the senior center and saying, who remembers this event? We had a history remembering event that turned into pure chaos. Is a way, as opposed to saying, I'm just going to go out and try to create community. Having a little excuse is really helpful.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'd like to dip back into your catalog a little bit for a song that we, back in 2021, you were doing that hashtag, each and every day. No,
yeah,
it was
today and every day. That's the name of the song, but we might have done each and every day. I don't know.
Yeah, and we did a little video at that time. It was still the pandemic and stuff. I really like this. It kind of gets at some of the things you're talking about. If you don't mind, we'll play at least a little.
Absolutely. And this is Anja Dovecoats. She and I were doing a gig together, and she said, I am going to offer you what I offer very few people, which is an animation. And I hadn't even finished this song yet. And I said, if you will do that, I know exactly what song it will be. And this was it.
That's so great.
Hey there, polar bear, it's quite a mess we found. Life is one heavy trip, our paws are sinking in the ground. I see you out lumbering at the break of dawn. How can we survive and save the day before the day is gone? Well, I know I'm gonna find a way. I know I'm gonna light the way. 'Cause if I'm ever gonna make it, then I gotta say, I can't save the world today and every day. Young blood coming up and coming from behind. You know you've got the force to change the world, and it's your mind. Your big plans are shining like the bright rays of the sun. We can't be done when all I see is that you just begun. Well, I know you're gonna find a way. I know you're gonna light the way. So if we're ever gonna make it, then you gotta say, I can't save the world today and every day.
It's just a great tune, a real anthem for that era. And thanks for doing it. That animation was awesome.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was. It's one of those things where she sent it to me. I was like, "That's great," and I think at the end it said something like, "The end," and we agreed. I don't remember that it was going to be like a new beginning at the end or something. But otherwise, I was like, "You got this," yeah, it was. I mean, it sounds so again syrupy, but I think a sense of agency is really important right now. A sense of what we can do is crucial.
Yeah, and so we're back to the Hummingbird Highway album. And how do you put together a collection? I assume you have more songs than the ones you don't just write an album and then.
I mean, this one there were a couple that they were really self-selected out, and they weren't quite done. I mean, they weren't. It finds its own level. Yeah, this is what. And actually, there was one that because I wanted to have 11 songs, and I thought it's just not there. So this is what we had.
Do you want to talk just briefly about the mix of tunes? I love listening to it, but I don't know if you want to just sort of say, is there a flow or any of them particularly you want to dive in on?
No, they were all written, over a few years, as opposed to, because I was working on other projects, so it's a little bit more eclectic, and I've been more over the mental map than maybe in some other records, like Mortal City was very much a splat on reaction to touring and all of these cities reminding me of people and people reminding me of cities. And so it's a huge theme. And End of the Summer is very much about sort of authority and kind of my head on with corporate authority, like a kind of a wall that you hit. But this one was more wide ranging, like a hummingbird. And
Yeah.
but it's really interesting, Andy, is that one thing that I did during the pandemic, and I talked about, is like, I didn't write that much. I cooked. I got to be a better cook. I really cleaned my house from top to bottom. And the truth is, I kind of cleaned this house from top to bottom. But I also just really spent a lot of time looking at birds. And sure enough, there's Hummingbird Highway. There's a song called "What Bird Did You See?" Maryland has a birds in it. There's birds in every song almost. There's just a mention, and maybe that's in all my songs, but that seems to be the only theme. I guess I haven't figured out sort of. I was thinking of calling it civilization, and I told my manager Patty that, and she just paused, and then she said, "Is that a joke?" And she said, "The name of the album is Hummingbird Highway. Like, what's civilization? Like a bunch of pictures of squares and blocks?" I was like, "Well, I thought so. The Joy Division t-shirt's really cool." And she's like, "Oh, Dar." So, but in a way, it's the songs are united sort of by my take on how we, jump into being civilized. Like we got to give ourselves credit. I mean, it takes a lot of doing, but we meet in the square, we meet in the commons and figure stuff out. And so Maryland is Jamie Raskin, the congressman who I discussed, he called and said, "They're retiring the main state song. Let's write another one." So
Wow.
he sent me a scroll, Cal Ripken, Billie Holiday, everything about Maryland. The precedent for marriage equality, and said, "Okay, let's get to work. It's going to be long, but it's going to be great." And I was like, I couldn't do it. And then seeing how he worked so hard with, the impeachment hearings and everything else, his strength, comes from Maryland. And I realized that this would be a Jamie song as a son of Maryland. And people who've met him from very different political backgrounds. I met some people in Canada who were like, "We met him. We love him. I mean, we hate him, but we love him." Like his passion for democracy and for the, what it could be comes from being with his parents in Strom Thurmond, literally in the 60s and 70s. And his passion comes from Rachel Carson, who, fought, Silent Spring was fought with amidst much controversy and ridicule. So he's like, "Oh yeah, that." When you're from Maryland, you expect all that. You just keep on going forward. So, songs like that are all over the album.
Well, let me play a little bit of it, at least. Here it's queued up.
Coming back to the free state that's a part of me. To the Appalachian Range and the Allegheny. Heading out to the harbor and the streets of Baltimore. Swinging south across that Long Bay Bridge onto the eastern shore. Maryland, 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 Maryland. I'm coming back again, coming back to Maryland. come from the free state, free and beautiful. A Frederick Douglass portrait watched every kid in school. And my parents drove us all the county wide. Anytime the Thurgood Marshal called to march on freedom's side. Maryland, 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 I'm coming back again, coming back to Maryland. In the roaring wind that sped the tall ships to the fight, in the hum of the midnight rail whose riders kept the flame inside. As Rachel Carson lives in every songbird's call. Maryland was where I dreamed I'd be a force of good for all. Maryland, 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 I became the congressman for the 8th in Maryland. And so I learned quickly what they had in store. Every job I said I'd take, they would give me more. When I asked Elijah Cummings how I'd see it through, he said there's always time to do the work you're supposed to do. Maryland, Maryland, he's from Maryland. Rest in power, my friend, from the state of Maryland. But now Frederick Douglass calls to Harriet Tubman. Gotta raise the lantern for the conscience of our government. You know the backwards clock, we've learned to read the signs. From every bloody tug of war out on the Mason-Dixon line. Maryland, Maryland, lead the way again. Maryland, Maryland. It's when you come from Maryland, you proud to be an American. I'm from Maryland. I'm from Maryland.
Really nice. I had not caught that line. Whoops, stop the ad. I had not caught the line about Rachel Carson living in every Songbird's call. That's one fun thing about listening to songs. You can dig in more and you hear things you hadn't necessarily heard the first time around.
True, true.
Very cool. And has Raskin heard it?
Yeah, the first time I played it was at a fundraiser for this thing he does called Democracy Summer, which was, kids learning about democracy and canvassing and calling people and doing voter registration stuff. My son did it, and it really, I don't think he'll ever admit it, but I think it really changed something. It deepened something. So I owed Jamie, and I did a thing and played it for a bunch of Marylanders.
That's great. So I want to talk a little bit more before we close out about the role of music these days. The roles of music these days. There are many. Some of them are restorative, or just sort of to keep the joy in our lives. There's music on the front lines. There's Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger and everything they did, and Steve Earle, who's coming up here to Maine. We'll be seeing him October 11th, and there are people that we'll never hear of, musicians who are not prominent, who are doing remarkable things. And there was one I added to the post I wrote about the show today. It's a woman in the Chicago area named Jocelyn Walsh, who has been going to the protests at that ICE detention facility outside Chicago in Broadview, Illinois. And I just want to show and talk about her briefly and just kind of honor her, her approach to this issue. Just have to, there's no producer here, as you know, just me.
You're doing great. You always do great with this stuff.
Oh my God. Anyway, I'll try.
Pressure's on, sorry.
Yeah, so here we go. So she works in tech, and she's 31. And Friday, this was her at the protests there, and I'm just going to play this. Hopefully, I think you should be able to hear the sound. I forgot the lyrics, but then everyone chimes in. So that was this joyous moment on Friday. Saturday, yesterday, there was fresh tear gas and the intensification of the crackdown by the ICE agents on these protesters. And this guy, who's best known for being in this picture that's been widely circulated, he's a veteran. Curtis Evans, a Marine veteran, he took that video of her. He posted on Facebook today. Saturday, the protests intensified, and a projectile, one of those rubber pepper spray bullets, went through her Taylor guitar and wrecked her guitar. So there's sort of frontline music, and it reminded me of course, of Woody Guthrie's guitar.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of what's got to happen. You know, everyone here just today down the road at the Trenton Grange, which is one of those rural, farmers get together kind of places. They right now they're playing from 2 p.m. till 10 p.m. There's Rock Against Prison State. And what have you seen? What do you see right now? There's also people like Jesse Wells, who I glommed onto a year ago after the Farm Aid, writing a song every few hours, it seemed.
Yeah.
And then there's the Neils, and so just talk a little bit about the span of the roles of music, and when you think of times like this.
Well, it's I think a lot. I taught a course about music history and music movements, right. And it was the guide text that I had was called "Playing for Change" by Rob Rosenthal and Richard Flax, and it was helpful because it aligned with something that I didn't have the language for, which is, I was thinking of writing a book sort of that was a distillation of the course, and the beginning of the book was going to say, in the beginning, Bob Dylan descended from the heavens and sang the songs that created a movement. If you believe that, this is not the book for you. And so what was so intense about what they wrote about and what I was starting to see in concerts is it's the way people show up for concerts. It's the way they make music together. It's the way that they play in local bands, the way they have open mics, the way that they, that is a real social force that, if there's a protest at an ICE detention center, and, I encourage us to go right there and say, we are witnessing this. You are not on the right side of history. If you get a call from a musical buddy to go down there with or without your instruments, but probably with, aren't you more likely to do that? If somebody says, you've got to show up for history, you got to show up whether nobody shows up at, and it's going to be cold and it's going to be, 7 a.m. If a friend calls you, and a friend with whom you have that kind of gristy connection, which is the music thing, the homology of joy, recognizing the poetry in the music or in the lyrics. If that friend calls you, you're going to go more, these groups are going to go. And if you are a local band with a certain following and you say, we're going to show up and we're going to do it, come along. It's just, it's so much more, I think that we can expect more of ourselves when we have these cultural, social, and specifically, I'd say musical groupings where as listeners and as, people who just play, or as people who write songs recreationally, those connections are really strong. And I would always tell the students to write a term paper on, how music could attract people. And one of the kids, could help them find, a more inclusive world and a more engaged world. And one kid wrote this beautiful thing about somebody living in a state far apart from from like-minded people, realizing that he's gay and hearing this one song on the radio and kind of hearing that if you go to New York, you're going to find more people like that, and kind of hearing the code and taking the train. And, so it's true. Lyrics can be a beacon. Lyrics can be a bulwark, a way of saying, yeah, this is right. And Crosby, Stills and Nash wrote For Dead in Ohio 15 days after right after the protest, and it was on the radio 15 days afterwards. I mean, that instant call and response, was so much in the culture at the time. I don't know if we can expect that now. That's very powerful. But so is just finding ways to appreciate music, play music, do music together. It's what Rob and Richard called the homology. We're not joined by necessarily a lot of different backgrounds, but we have this in common. So I'm a believer in, bringing music into the schools, bringing music into the communities, open mics, because it creates that warm center that gets us marching, literally the beat of the march. So I have, I think, a wider sense of, as you saw with Jocelyn Walsh, just groups coming together and participating in a fun way is, I think, that's also adjacent to humor. And I think that the people who've done really, I just saw a beautiful picture today that said, all right, knitters, you know what to do to prepare here in Portland. And, they'd yarn bombed all the trees, which is just gorgeous. I don't know if you have a picture of yarn bombing.
No, that's great.
This idea that all these troops are going to come rolling in to these fabulously yarn bombed, knitted offerings. I think it's really important, just to say, I see right through what you're doing, I think is a powerful witness. And music is a way of saying, I'm cutting right through this. You're threatening us, and you're trying to turn a wheel backwards. And this is a joyful or elegiacal witness that counts. So participatory music, I think, is a real secret weapon or a secret tool.
Absolutely. And just the arts, as you were saying, and humor, sort of basically counterpoint. That idea of the yarn bomb. I'll tweet about it later.
Yeah. I love somebody to be like, all right, Portland, you know what to do. Knitters, you are poised as well, you should be. Yeah.
Gosh, golly. Well, it's been great to visit with you. You have long days ahead of you. You're going to be touring again in December. Really, congratulations on the album. And I hope everyone gives it a spin, whether on one of the electronic portals or an actual disc of either an album or I think is it on vinyl, I assume?
Yes, it is. We could not do vinyl. That would just be so, it's retro not to do vinyl, but
that's pretty funny.
I look forward, Andy, you're part of my peer group, and I look forward to discussing things that we can do in common going forward. It's a special time. And as somebody, my friend John Deere, I don't know if you know Father John Deere, he's one of those Jesuit priests who gets arrested a lot. And he has a podcast where somebody said, if you have to ask yourself, does this feel normal? And then you ask yourself what you feel you need to do in response to whether this time in history requires something different from you or the same. And I think I ask myself that every day. In some ways, I just want to persist. And you're part of my group. So we will continue to dream and imagine together. You're a great brain on this one.
Well, that's one thing we all have to do is convene and imagine and not give in to the sense of inevitability and doom that they're trying to troll us with.
Yeah, we're being peddled.
You know, would you mind? I have two songs that I've written that relate to current events. One is goofy and one is serious. Which would you prefer to listen to?
I think I'd like to hear the serious one.
Oh darn! Okay, no, that's good.
Oh no, let's hear the goofy one. Okay,
No,
so
no,
I
no.
changed my mind.
I have them recorded. I don't want to pull my guitar now. So you want to hear the? Well, you said serious first.
Well, I want to hear your take. And a crystallized song is a crystallized thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's "Save Dreams for Sleeping," which is kind of the serious one. Let me hold on one second. Hopefully this
We all hold a dream somewhere deep in our minds, where everything's fair and everyone's kind. Flowers all blooming, no smoke in the skies, no wars in the headlines, no tears in your eyes. But save dreams for sleeping, it's time to get real. Hard workers are suffering while billionaires steal. Young women in trouble can't find caring hands. House builders born elsewhere get bundled in vans. I'm not saying it's easy, all good things take time. Those trying to divide us are good at their crimes. But if we stop dreaming, dive into the fray, a more perfect union is coming our way. I'm not saying it's easy, all good things take time. Those trying to divide us are good at their crimes. But if we stop dreaming, dive into the fray, a more perfect union is coming. A more perfect union is coming. A more perfect union is coming our way. Our country needs mending, but how to begin? With problems so tangled, no start and no end. Begin by protecting those facing the fires. Reach out by connecting through common desires. One step at a time, the trust you create will carry us further than yelling and hate. One stitch at a time, the fabric you weave will grow ever stronger than you can believe. So save dreams for sleeping, it's time to get real. Hard workers are suffering while billionaires steal. Young women in trouble can't find caring hands. House builders born elsewhere get bundled in vans. I'm not saying it's easy, all good things take time. Those trying to divide us are good at their crimes. But if we stop dreaming, dive into the fray, a more perfect union is coming. A more perfect union is coming. A more perfect union is coming our way. A more perfect union is coming. A more perfect union is.
Great.
There you go. It's
It just cut. But you know what, Andy? I will tell you, when I do this songwriting retreats, I say, I don't want to concentrate too much on the audiences, but there is something that I've noticed that audiences are looking for with songs with lyrics. One is, did you really go there? You know, if it's just a beautifully observed thing, even if it's sad and there's no solution, is it, you know, did you really go there? Did you put yourself really in the shoes of that narrator, and beautifully observe? Another thing audiences are saying is like, okay, you really went there. What did you bring back for us? And that's a beautiful example of a song that brings something back for us, just to reassure and say they're good at their crimes. I'm not saying it's easy, because they are good at this. I think it's some medicine for us. You know, we're up against something that's very sophisticated, and some of the things that so now I'm blanking, but you know, you give us some, like, even one step at a time. If we can give each other some tools and encouragement, there's a lot of circular firing range within our shared political party, where there's a lot of blame and why didn't you and why don't you, and you know, it's really helpful when we encourage each other and give each other little tools and little encouragements and one day at a time things, as well as the solidarity that lets us do bigger things. There's a big system of big late stage capitalism. It's a narrative that we are swimming in upstream against, in terms of how violent it's become. So you brought us back some encouragement and some little tools. I think sharing little seeds, little tools is a very important thing we can do for each other. And then people will tell us we're not doing enough. And the people who tell me I'm not doing enough,
we're not doing the right thing.
At the page, their Facebook pages, I'm like, you're doing nothing. I'm like, oh, I see, what you're doing is telling me to do something. No, I got to chill out today, and tomorrow I'm going to act, and then I'm going to chill out. I'm like, I got to figure out the biorhythm and figure out how to be an encouraging presence forward tomorrow. So thank you for that. Beautiful.
Well, thank you for visiting 1,000 towns and writing hundreds of songs and helping to spur other people to be songwriters and all the other stuff you're doing, including Spooky Town.
Thanks, Sandy. Nice to see you.
At all those dimensions, all those levels. Dar Williams, thanks for coming on this enterprise, this journey again. Sustain what? This is Andy Revkin with Dar Williams. Find her album and go to darwilliams.com and learn lots more. Go to Righteous Babe Records and learn lots more. And have a good night wherever you are, and or good morning, depending on where you are. Share this on whatever platform you've found it, and onward we go. Thanks, Dar. Take well.
See you soon.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.